A number of months ago, I made a video that included some of these guys. These are the Dune action figures by LJN, made in 1984 to go with the Dune movie that came out in that same year. And if you want to know all the details, you can check out that video, but long story short, LJN had a very ambitious plan for their toy line for this movie. They wanted to make a bunch of toys, action figures, sort of role-play toys, vehicles, but they really only managed to get a few of them out, including these 6 action figures, before the line just kind of petered out and was canceled. Part of that's due to the movie itself. It underperformed at the box office, and honestly, it was not at all the kind of movie that would support a toy line. It's not very child-friendly. I love it. I think it's a masterpiece, but let's be real here. There's a lot of things in that movie that would probably scare kids more than inspire them to play. The toys themselves are also a little strange. They're 6 inches tall instead of the more, at least today, more commonly accepted 3 3/4 inch size. That means that they're bigger, more expensive to produce, I imagine, and also harder to make vehicles for, so you can't really fit them into toy vehicles as easily as you could with Star Wars. So anyway, they also have these action features. All of them have a little push-button action feature, like Fade here has a button on his side that can make him, if you had the knife in his hand, which I do not have, you could have him stab someone, that kind of thing. Not really that great, honestly, these toys, but I do find them extremely charming. And so I've kind of enjoyed collecting these in the last year or two, even though I never had them as a child or anything like that. So that's why I was really interested when I heard that Super7, who are the company behind the ReAction line of retro-styled toys, was coming out with a Dune line as well. And not only just a Dune line, but one that was directly inspired by these figures right here. So kind of a revamped version of the LJN toys, but in the smaller scale that they typically use, the 3 3/4 inch scale. So as soon as I was able to order those, I went ahead and did that, and I'd like to show them to you today and maybe make some comparisons with the original figures. So let's go ahead and do that. So the new ReAction figures come on these cards, as they typically do in the ReAction line, and as you can see, they're 3 3/4 inch scale. These kinds of figures that come on cards are typically a bit of a conundrum for me, because I like having the cards to display, but I also want the figure, to have it outside of the package and enjoy it. In this case, honestly, I'm not that blown away by the card art design. As you'll see, I don't think it really matches the aesthetic of the movie all that well, and it doesn't really even look that vintagey to me somehow. I would think if you're going to go with this style of card, having something closer to what you used for the Star Wars figures with a picture from the movie might be better. I don't know if they're trying to get away from, not having to pay for royalties or something like that. I don't know, or it's just an aesthetic choice, but I don't feel that bad about taking this off the card. I probably will keep the card just for the heck of it, but they're not that great, to be honest with you. On the back, it shows the other characters in the first wave, which I have all of them here. So I'm going to go ahead and, first of all, show you all of the cards, all the packages without opening them, and then I will go ahead and open the figures and take a look at them a little bit more closely. Here we have Paul Atreides in his military dress uniform, and he's got some accessories, a knife, and a weirding module, it looks like. That's the weapon that they would use with their voice. Then they have one very interesting addition here. This is Paul Atreides in his, Paul Muad'Dib form. In other words, he's wearing the still suit. And this is something that I've always thought they should have done in the vintage line. They should have had the Muad'Dib version maybe first, because it's a lot more playable. You can do a lot more things with this version, I think. And one really cool detail, if you can see, we'll take a closer look at this in a second, but he's got the blue eyes of the Fremen that, happens if you take too much of the spice. So that's a pretty cool little detail. Similarly, we have Stilgar here, who is one of the figures that I showed you a second ago in the vintage line, but they've revamped the paint a fair amount, and we'll look at that more closely in a second, but he also has the blue eyes. So again, we have these two, almost a Tron-like aesthetic here with the lines and the, primary colors. Not really feeling it. And then we have two sort of bad guys in this first wave. We have, of course, Baron Harkonnen, who is one of my favorites for some reason. And I like how he has a much bigger, taller bubble than the other guys because he's so big. And we also have a Sardaukar warrior, or, the Emperor's sort of elite strike force. So, yeah, pretty cool. Let's go ahead and get these off of their backs, off their card backs, and we'll see what they look like. So the first figure we're going to look at is Paul Atreides in his military uniform, and you can see just the huge difference in size between the two figures. Obviously, that is the most striking thing you see when you compare them, but also you can see that there's a big difference in coloration here. This is sort of a green color, olive drab maybe, and this one is basically a black uniform. And I think the new version is in fact correct, at least judging from what I can see in the film. He appears to have more of a very, very dark gray or a black uniform on. The face sculpts are pretty different. It looks like they've redone the face maybe entirely on the reaction version. I never really liked this sculpt all that much. He looks a little strange and he looks a little sad. And I think this one is, while not a fantastic likeness for the actual actor, still looks a lot better. I will say, though, that Kyle MacLachlan, the actor who played Paul, I think does have brown hair more so than black, so that's a little bit more closer to the vintage figure there. Of course, they've gotten rid of the action feature as well, which I am perfectly happy about. I never really enjoyed those all that much because they look dumb. They have these things sticking out of their waists. So, yeah, pretty nice upgrade here, honestly, for this figure. He also comes with some accessories in the form of the weirding module. I don't have the vintage version of the accessories for any of these figures, unfortunately, but it's pretty much the same in most cases. The weirding module and the knife, which I'm not going to try and have them hold. I guess it looks like maybe you could get them to do it, but I don't know. These seem a little bit big to actually fit in their hands, and yeah, doesn't really look like it's the kind of thing that they could easily hold, so I'm not going to try. So next up, we're going to look at Stilgar, who is in the vintage line, this figure here. And here is the reaction version. You can see, again, difference in coloration here. Let's see if we can look at that a little bit better. This is just plain brown plastic on the vintage version, and they've got this weird pink, I don't know, I think it's meant to be ropes that they used to sort of climb up on the worm, but it was not pink in the movie, so I don't know why they chose that. And on the new version, they've done a really fantastic job, I think, getting the coloration of the still suit right. It's not just one color, it's got several different colors. It's got kind of a very, very dark brown, but also it looks like it's got some dust or dirt in it, just like we had in the movie. And of course, they've made the ropes here the right color as well. The face sculpt is very similar, but as I mentioned, we have the blue eyes over here, which is very strange that they didn't put in the original figures, quite frankly. I don't know why they didn't do that. His accessories, the original vintage figure came with kind of a shovel, for lack of a better term, that they used to kind of, latch on to the worm. They did not include that with these guys, but they did include this sort of grappling hook accessory that I guess you can sort of hook onto his belt if you wanted to. I don't know. Yeah, you could do that if you wanted. Now, they also included one figure that was not in the vintage line, at least not in the released one. This is, of course, Paul Muad'Dib, the version of Paul Atreides after he had joined with the Fremen and, you know, started going out in the desert. He's got his still suit on, just like Stilgar did, and, you know, basically the exact same thing. From the neck down, these are the same figure, I think. Yeah. But still, it looks great, and we've got the face sculpt there with the blue eyes and the breathing tube. Looks like it's the same sculpt here, but just reworked, which is fine. So he also came with one of these hooks. Next up, we have the Sardaukar Warrior. We'll go ahead and get his vintage version out here as well. Very similar figures, actually, these are, although you'll see there are some differences in the paint. They did not paint the feet gray here on the reaction version. Not really sure which is accurate here, to be honest with you. Otherwise, more or less the same, although this is a bit more of a glossy look, and this is a bit more matte. The reaction version of the figure, well, both of these, the vintage one as well, but I don't have it, came with several accessories. They have this rifle. They have an interesting looking dagger, and they also have a small pistol. See if we can get that to focus. So, again, not really going to try and get them to hold these, I think. So, a little bit of a waste there. I tried half-heartedly, and it looked like it was going to, I don't know. I could probably get the pistol in there if I wanted to, but I'm not sure I'm going to risk it. Finally, we've got Baron Harkonnen, who is the only one to not come with any kind of accessory. The original vintage figure, which we have over here, actually did come with an accessory of a sort, which I don't have. He had the levitation belt here, which was a separate thing that went across his chest here. And as I say, I unfortunately don't have that. Here they've decided to just sculpt it on, which makes a lot more sense in my opinion. And they've done a fairly detailed paint job here as well. Lots of detail, lots of different colors. I'm pretty impressed with this as well, although he looks even more rotund in the reaction version because his arms are kind of splayed out even more so than on the vintage LJN. So that's kind of funny, but yeah, I think these are pretty decent upgrades to the original figures. So here they are all together. I think they did redo all of these sculpts from scratch rather than trying to scan the figures. It just seems like, you know, there's enough differences that these are obviously not just scans and shrunk down versions of those LJN figures, but they really managed to capture the feel and the style of the original figures pretty well, I think. So I am quite happy with these. And they've, you know, as I mentioned, kind of upgraded them in some sense with the paint. So very cool. If you want to check them out, they go for about $18 to $20, depending on where you want to get them. I got mine from the Super7 online store directly from them. That was the only place that seemed like they were shipping right away. I did pay for these, for the record. They didn't send them to me. They don't know anything about this video, but I'll go ahead and put the link to the video just in the video description for that. I do hope that they will come out with another wave of these so that we can get the rest of the LJN figures. For example, we have Raban and Fade here that we still don't have in the reaction line. And then I would really like to see some of the prototype figures that LJN created. They made prototypes for characters like Lady Jessica and Gurney Halleck. Those would be perfect choices for another wave, or even characters that have never been produced at all would be really cool. So yeah, fingers crossed that this is a successful product and they'll keep making new waves for it. By the way, if you're interested in retro style Dune figures, friend of the channel, Vivid Motion Customs, is currently doing a Kickstarter for his line of 3D printable retro Dune figures. They are not mimicking the LJN style, but they are in a retro kind of style, the 5 points of articulation kind of style. So if you're interested in that, and you're watching this sort of immediately after I release this video, there's still probably time to get in on the Kickstarter. It's probably less than 12 hours at this point as you're watching it, but you could do that to get all of the models at once if you're interested in doing that. Or if you just wanted to get a few of the models, you can also go to his Cults 3D store and get them sort of a la carte individually. I'll put a link to that also in the video description. I am a backer of the Kickstarter, and it's a pretty cool thing because he's got versions of characters that I'm sure will never come out in other forms, kind of obscure versions of different characters and so forth. So if you're a Dune fan, that's definitely something to check out. All right, well, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. This video was brought to you with the help of my Patreon supporters, including these Palace VIPs, Angelica Brady and Jesper Myrtu. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to help support the channel for as little as $1 a month, you can check out the video description for a link to my Patreon page.